The concept of a supreme being has been with mankind from the beginning. The idea that there are beings greater than us overseeing the daily life of all people. In modern times, many now believe in technological beings being supreme and have created religions around the concept. Since aliens are often seen as being technologically superior to humans, they must also be spiritually advanced. Therefore, it is no coincidence that people have placed them upon an altar and given them godlike status. Since the 1930s, many UFO and alien religions have emerged in human society. Are they a legitimate belief system, or just a new way to con the masses? Contactees are persons who claim to have experienced contact with extraterrestrials. Some claimed ongoing encounters, while others claim to have had as few as a single encounter. Evidence is anecdotal in all cases. As a cultural phenomenon, contactees perhaps had their greatest notoriety from the late 1940s to the late 1950s. But individuals continue to make similar claims in the present. Some have shared their messages with small groups of followers, and many have issued newsletters or spoken at UFO conventions. Contactees became a cultural phenomenon in the 1940s and continued through the 1950s and 1960s, often giving lectures and writing books about their experience. The phenomenon still exists today. Skeptics hold that such contactees are deluded or dishonest in their claims. Contactees usually portray space brothers as more or less identical in appearance and mannerisms to humans. The brothers are also almost invariably reported as disturbed by the violence, crime, and wars that infest the Earth, and by the possession of various Earth nations of nuclear and thermonuclear weapons.
I was aboard a flying saucer in the Nevada desert on 11 different occasions. I was taken into this monstrous saucer by one of the men and confronted with a lady captain. Beautiful complexion, beautiful appearing woman, and they're peaceful people. They mean no harm to us. They come down here to investigate what's going on Earth. And they certainly convinced me that they're peaceful, and they come from another planet they call Clarion. They told me there was life on Mars and that there were life on other planets as well, and all planets except Earth had interplanetary means of travel.
I was picked up on a desert, in California desert, and I was taken to the mothership, and they were flowing around, not too close to the moon, but with instruments. Similar, you might say, except it wasn't a camera, it was a regular sort of a telescopic instruments that we were able to see what was on the moon on the other side of it.
I was taken on board a 200-foot diameter spacecraft in the Mojave Desert, and while I was on the craft, they presented me with this little crystal stone. They told me it was called Martian jasper. This craft, by the way, was from the planet Mars.
I have made telepathic contact for the past 8 years with many space people from many areas of space, both inside and outside of the solar system.
But I do believe what I see. And I am one of those who was inside a flying saucer.
They told me that language is no barrier to them anywhere. They could speak any language.
So they told you that in English?
Yes.
I seem to become one with the entire universe.
UFO religions began to spring up around the 1930s and were in full swing by the 1960s. This coincides with the growing phenomenon of UFO sightings around the world. One of the largest groups to be formed was the Cosmic Circle of Fellowship. This group was formed in the early 1950s in Chicago. Its founder, A postman named William Ferguson, who also happened to be a convicted fraudster, claimed to have made contact with beings from other planets. A practitioner of deep relaxation, Ferguson claimed that during one such session in 1938, he was suddenly transported to the seventh dimension, where he received enlightenment. The week after the incident, he had another out-of-body experience, this time landing in the sixth dimension, where all creation took place. He also became acquainted with a being named Hugua, who took Ferguson to Mars, and the leaders of the Venusians in 1947 and 1954, respectively. One of the group's doctrines is the veneration of Hugua as a divine being. Ferguson also claims that his deep relaxation techniques can help the members achieve a higher level of dimensional consciousness and allow them to travel out of their earthly bodies. After Ferguson died in 1967, the Chicago branch took control of the group and is still active today. Another group that formed in the 1930s was the Uratia Foundation. This group is the caretaker and promoter of the Uratian book, which the group believes came from some aliens called the Ovantran Commission. According to them, the commission, through a sleeping human medium, contacted and dictated the book to Chicago Dr. W.S. Sadler during the 1930s. Sadler then formed a group to check and review the book for any errors. Eventually, this group would transform itself into the Uratia Foundation, which currently has affiliated groups in almost 24 countries and has printed almost 500,000 copies of the book. The book is basically an alternate retelling of the history of the Earth, the universe in general, and Christianity in particular. According to the book, Jesus' real name was Michael, and the universe is made up of 7 concentric rings, with God's dwelling right in the middle. The Uratia Foundation also claims that the book supplements the Bible as the definitive authority of truth, and has encouraged local study groups and other movements to read it. The Seekers was formed in 1954. Leon Festler, in another one of his groundbreaking studies, managed to infiltrate and observe a Chicago UFO doomsday cult known as the Seekers. Through the automatic writing of its founder, Dorothy Morton, the Seekers believed they were receiving messages from beings called Guardians, who came from the planet Clarion. These beings eventually warned the group that the world would end on December 21st, 1954, and instructed them to prepare for a rescue on that day. When the appointed time came and passed, Martin received another message through automatic writing, saying they saved the world because of their intense faith. However, media's mockery and threats of involuntary commitment forced the group to eventually scatter. Martin went to Peru and lived there for a few years. In 1965, she returned to Arizona, where she established a new group called the Association of Sanadilla and Sanat Kamura. She continued receiving messages for the group, which still operates today, until she passed away in 1992. It's no surprise that neo-Nazis like to brag about their race. However, some of them go to the extreme mile and believe that their ancestors actually came from outer space. In a bizarre combination of false racial superiority and UFO fascination, members of the Temple Society, a neo-Nazi group formed in Vienna in the 1990s, believe that the original Aryan race were actually ancient Sumerians from the planet Aldebaran, who came here eons ago and settled in Atlantis. According to them, these beings led a highly segregated life back in their solar system, with them naturally at the top. They also believe that the Aryans, Sumerians, being celestial in nature, were mandated to dominate the world someday and conquer the other races, especially the Jews. Lastly, the members continue to hope that the reinforcements from Aldebaran, whom the Nazis supposedly contacted for help in 1967, will soon arrive to help them win World War II once and for all. Arguably, the forerunner to all UFO religions, the I Am activity, had its start in 1930 after its founder, Guy Ballard, claimed to have met the legendary Saint Germain in Mount Shasta, California. An ascended master, Saint Germain, instructed Ballard to spread the method wherein people could unlock their I Am potential, becoming enlightened enough to also turn into ascended masters. After that encounter, Ballard formed his movement in 1932 and continuously wrote books under the telepathic guidance of Saint Germain and other ascended masters, including Jesus. At its heyday, the movement reportedly had almost 1 million members. After Ballard died in 1939, his wife Edna became the channel for the divine messages, which she continued to receive until her death in 1971. Since then, the movement has been controlled by its board of directors based in Illinois. Although they claim to have 300 affiliate groups around the world, no new teachings have been received since the couple's deaths, ostensibly because the Ascended Masters have not yet appointed their successors. The One World Family Commune is another UFO religion still operating today. If there's a religion that can best combine hippie, communism, and UFO lifestyles, then this is it. Also known as the Industrial Church of the New World Comforter, this religion came into existence in California in 1973. Its founder, a painter named Alan Noonan, experienced a series of otherworldly encounters with extraterrestrials who charged him with becoming the New World Comforter and channel of the prophesied everlasting gospel. After receiving these instructions, Noonan changed his name to Alan Michael and set about forming his group under the central doctrine of unicommunism. According to this belief, peace can be achieved when all countries disarm themselves and people form a hippie-like commune. Aside from that, members also believe in a group of aliens called the Galactic Elohim of Galactica. According to them, these aliens, also the original creators of the Earth, would someday return to our planet and help in its transformation into a society where energy is free and injustice does not exist. A full 8 years before the extremely bloody Waco, Texas siege, an eerily parallel event happened when authorities raided the lumber yard belonging to Orville Gordon, the founder of Outer Dimensional Forces. Gordon created the group sometime in the 1960s when he became convinced that extraterrestrials, known as the Outer Dimensional Forces, would start Armageddon after they saw how humans abused the Earth. Renaming himself Nodrock, Gordon spelled backwards, he converted his property into a UFO landing base called the Armageddon Time Arc Base. He believed that he and his followers would be picked up by the extraterrestrials and whisked away to safety during Doomsday. The group also gained notoriety when one of its members planted a pipe bomb in a former mayor's car in 1980. after the latter pressed efforts to buy the lumberyard and convert it into a shopping mall. It is speculated that the 90-something Gordon later died and was buried somewhere on his property. The group has persisted to this day, and its members even maintain a website. The Uranus Academy of Science, formed in San Diego in 1954 by the husband and wife team of Ernest and Ruth Norman, who both claim to be reincarnations of famous historical figures. The Uranus Academy of Sciences exposes some very weird beliefs. For one, they teach members called Unarians that their psychic prowess will grow if they meditate with a purportedly 10 millennia old crystal skull named Max. Claiming to be a scientific group and not a religion, the group also teaches its members about interdimensional physics, which they assert can answer all questions about the universe and one's existence. Aside from that, the Unarians state that the Earth will soon rejoin a coalition of planets that had broken up hundreds of thousands of years ago, and that this event will usher in the Age of Prosperity. They predicted that this would happen back in 2001 with the landing of several spaceships. When that failed, they later explained that the 9/11 attacks showed the aliens that humanity was not yet ready to reunite with them, and thus they postponed the event. Latin for "let there be light," fa lux, had its humble beginnings in 1973 when its founder, a Swiss secretary named Erika Bestschinger, fell on her head during a horse ride. Subsequently, she discovered she was the Virgin Mary and could communicate with transcendental beings such as Jesus Christ. Changing her name to Urilla, she established her largely ascetic group in 1980 and later transferred it to their current headquarters in Germany's Black Forest area. Urilla and her group believed that the world would be devastated in the middle of 1998 by Nazi flying saucers and natural disasters. They also believed that friendly aliens would come to rescue the chosen few and use them to resettle a new paradise on Earth. However, when the appointed time came and passed, Urilla told her members that God had temporarily postponed the event because they all prayed very hard. Since then, the group has laid low, biding their time until another end of the world. For the most part, UFO religions are harmless, giving only a new perspective on spirituality. However, in the hands of a charismatic leader, an alien religion can be deadly. Heaven's Gate was an American UFO religious millenarian cult based in San Diego, California. Founded in 1974 and led by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. On March the 26, 1997, police discovered the bodies of 39 members of the group who had participated in a mass suicide in order to reach what they believed was an extraterrestrial spacecraft following comet Hale-Bopp. The group no longer exists, as its website states that Hale-Bopp brings closure to Heaven's Gate. Our 22 years of classroom here on planet Earth is finally coming to conclusion. Graduation from the human evolutionary level. We are happily prepared to leave this world and go with the crew. The son of a Presbyterian minister and a former soldier, Marshall Applewhite began his foray into biblical prophecy in the early 1970s. After being fired from the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, over an alleged homosexual relationship with one of his students, he met Bonnie Nettles a 44-year-old married nurse with an interest in theosophy and biblical prophecy, in March of 1972. According to Applewhite's writings, the two met in the psychiatric hospital where she worked during his stay there and quickly became close friends. Applewhite later recalled that he felt like he had known Nettles for a long time and concluded that they had met in a past life. She told him their meeting had been foretold to her by extraterrestrials, persuading him that he had a divine assignment. Eventually, Applewhite and Nettles resolved to contact extraterrestrials, and they sought like-minded followers. They published advertisements for meetings where they recruited disciples whom they called the Crew. At the events, they purported to represent beings from another planet, the next level, who sought participants for an experiment. They stated that those who agreed to take part in the experiment would be brought to a higher evolutionary level. In 1975, during a group meeting with 80 people in Joan Culpepper's Studio City home, they shared their simultaneous revelation that they had been told that they were the two witnesses written in the Bible story of the end time. Later in 1975, the Crew assembled at a hotel in Waldport, Oregon. After selling all worldly possessions and saying farewell to loved ones, the group vanished from the hotel and from the public eye. That night on the CBS Evening News, Walter Cronkite reported that the group had disappeared in one of the very first national reports on the developing religious group. A score of persons have disappeared. It's a mystery whether they've been taken on a so-called trip to eternity or simply been taken. In reality, Applewhite and Nettles had arranged for the group to go underground. From that point, Doe and T, as the two now called themselves, led the nearly 100-member crew across the country, sleeping in tents and sleeping bags and begging in the streets. Evading detection by authorities and media enabled the group to focus on Doe and T's doctrine of helping members of the crew achieve a higher evolutionary level above human, to which they claimed to have already reached. On March the 19th and 20th, 1997, Marshall Applewhite taped himself speaking of mass suicide and asserted it was the only way to evacuate this Earth. After claiming that a spacecraft was trailing Comet Hale-Bopp, Applewhite persuaded 38 members to commit suicide so their souls could board the supposed craft. Applewhite believed that after their deaths, an unidentified flight object would take their souls to another level of existence above human, which he described as being both physical and spiritual. The group rented a 9,200 square foot mansion in a gated community of upscale homes in the San Diego area community of Rancho Santa Fe. 38 Heaven's Gate members, plus group leader Applewhite, were found dead in the home on March 26 of 97. In the heat of the California spring, many of the bodies had begun to decompose by the time they were discovered. The bodies were later cremated. The members took a phenobarbital mixture with applesauce and washed down with vodka. Additionally, they secured plastic bags around their heads after ingesting the mix to induce asphyxiation. Authorities found the dead lying neatly in their own bunk beds, faces and torsos covered by a square purple cloth. Each member carried a $5 bill and 3 quarters in their pockets. The $5 bill was to cover vagrancy fines while members were out on jobs, while the quarters were to make phone calls. All 39 were dressed in identical black shirts and sweatpants, brand new black and white Nike athletic shoes, and armband patches reading Heaven's Gate Away Team. The adherents between the ages of 26 and 72 were believed to have died in 3 groups over 3 successive days, with remaining participants cleaning up after each prior group's death. 15 members died on March 24th, 15 more on March 25th, and 9 on March 26th. Leader Applewhite was the 3rd to the last member to die. 2 people remained after him and were the only ones found without bags over their heads. Among the dead was Thomas Nichols, brother of the actress Nichelle Nichols, who is best known for her role as Uhura in the original Star Trek television series. Only one of the group's members, Richard Ford, did not kill himself. He videotaped the mansion in Ranchero Santa Fe. However, that tape was not shown to police until 2002, 5 years after the event. The mass death of the Heaven's Gate group was widely publicized in the media as an example of mass suicide. 2 former members of Heaven's Gate, Wayne Cook and Charlie Humphreys, later committed suicide in a similar manner. Humphreys survived a suicide pact with Cook in May of 1997, but ultimately killed himself in February of 1998. One aspect of UFO religions and alien worshippers emerged in the 1960s when Eric von Däniken released his book, Ancient Astronauts. The book never says that aliens were the gods of our distant past, but rather asks the question, could they be? The ancient aliens theory was thus born, and many UFO religions adopted the idea that the gods of the past were returning. All over the internet and History Channel are folks who believe in ancient aliens. They subscribe to the idea that human development was guided by extraterrestrials in ancient times. These beliefs were pulled from ancient writings, stories, and religions, and while there is some evidence which appears to support this idea, many folks have taken it way too far. One of the big issues with ancient alien theorists is that their ideas can only be validated by ignoring a tremendous amount of evidence and cherry-picking that which fits their model. This is a symptom of religiousness. The other problem, which is also a religious trait, is the quick draw to conclude ancient aliens caused something to happen simply due to not knowing if God didn't create the universe, then who did? This is the classic religious argument. If we don't know how humans built the pyramids, then aliens must have done it. There are lots of ancient monolithic sites all over the world. In many cases, archaeologists aren't 100% certain how ancient civilizations built them. Ancient alien theorists use this as proof of their theory. Unfortunately, the absence of an answer doesn't imply evidence for aliens. In the Mahabharata, which is considered to be one of the most sacred books written about ancient Hindu life, philosophy, and culture, there are several references to extraterrestrials. There are thousands of references to Vyamnas, a flying chariot, men wearing possible spacesuits, and even tales of entire cities being wiped out by a powerful ray of energy. Even Oppenheimer, who developed the atomic bomb, responded to a person who asked if it was the first atomic warfare to ever take place on Earth by saying, well, yes, in modern times, of course. Oppenheimer was a known fan of ancient Indian philosophies and the Vedas. The war described in the Mahabharata has several parts which have astonishing similarities with what we know about nuclear and atomic warfare today. Contrary to what people may think about Islam, the truth is that they believe in extraterrestrial life. Unlike other major religions which disprove anything that isn't specifically mentioned in their holy books, most Muslims have no problem with the possible existence of UFOs. Some verses of the Quran talk about how Allah has not only created our worlds, but other worlds too. The other worlds have their own creatures, and they too had an Adam from whom the entire species developed. It also talks about the other worlds being possibly greater than the 7 heavens and 7 earths. One verse translates to Allah will bring together the life in the heavenly bodies and the life on earth when He so pleases. The Bible contains an iconic phrase that translates to, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground." The words us and our clearly indicates plurality, and if that's the case, is God singular in nature? It's ridiculous to state this is what was meant, but it is an interesting question to ask. Is it possible that God might be a being from a distant part of our universe? The Vatican has stated that they do believe in the existence of extraterrestrial beings. The Vatican astronomer Guy Consolmagno thinks that angels, morning stars, and heavenly beings might be from a different planet altogether. The ascension of Elijah can be perceived as an alien abduction due to some factors. The verse roughly translates to Elijah being taken up to the heavens by the Lord in a chariot of fire. This may sound like just a statement made from imagination, but why a chariot on fire? In what way would a chariot on fire be associated with a good thought? Any vehicle on fire is a terrible image to imagine. There is not a single aspect to that term which makes you think it is glorious. The verse says, "And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven." Then it proceeds to say, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." Sounds sort of like an alien abduction, doesn't it? Numerous Torah scholars of past and present generations have spoken about references to extraterrestrial life on Earth. In the book of Judges, Deborah, the prophetess, sings about the victory achieved by Barak over Sisera and says, "Cursed be Moraz, cursed be its inhabitants," says the angel of God. What is Moraz, and where is its inhabitants? Some people believe that Moraz is either a star or a planet, and that the heavenly bodies spoken about in the religious books refer to beings from other planets. Deborah also states, "From the heavens the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera." The star mentioned here, however, didn't come to their aid, and General Barak went on to penalize Moraz and its inhabitants. In the ancient Indian texts, there are several references to possible alien technology. Here are a few of such verses. At Rama's behest, the magnificent chariot rose up to a mountain of cloud with a tremendous din, and Bhima flew with his Vyama on an enormous ray which was as brilliant as the sun and made a noise like the thunder of a storm. An individual named Asura Maya is also described as possessing a Vyama, or an aircraft, that measured 12 cubits in circumference with 4 wheels. There's also a scene which describes Indra's dart, which is operated with a circular reflector. Once the weapon is switched on, it produced a shaft of light which, when focused on a target, would obliterate it. The incident written about the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the clearer references to possible extraterrestrial intervention. One of the verses says, "Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt." There is a lot of firepower, and everything described here sounds eerily similar to what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When Hiroshima was being rebuilt, the presence of stretches of sand transformed into glazed silicon was found due to atomic action. This is another instance of what looks like nuclear war in ancient Indian text. An ancient verse says, "Gurkha, flying in his swift and powerful Vyama, hurled against the 3 cities of Divitius and Andhescus a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. An incandescent column of smoke and fire, as brilliant as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. It was the unknown weapon, the iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vishyas and Andhakas." It goes on to describe how those burnt by this weapon were reduced to ashy corpses. The survivors, who were far away from the point of impact, had their hair and nails fall out. This definitely sounds eerily similar to a nuclear war. There are a lot of channeled books out there. There are a lot of people who channel out there. And there are a lot of people who firmly believe that the beings they are channeling are aliens. And then they write books about it. They believe this because the beings themselves said they were aliens. The whole idea of communicating with aliens isn't new. Johann Kepler wrote a novel that was published by his son in 1634 called The Dream, which was about how the Earth might look from the moon. The main characters got this information from a demon that lived on the moon, an alien. One of the early developers of automatic writing in the early 1900s was a French woman with the stage name Helen Smith. Her real name was Catherine Elise Muller. She had a bossy spirit guide named Leopold, who told her all kinds of things, including what Martians looked like. Then there's the writings of Richard S. Shaver, who worked in a noisy factory in the 30s, who started hearing voices that claimed to be aliens. He wrote down what those voices told him and sent it to Amazing Stories magazine, where it was published. To this day, some people truly believe he was communicating with aliens and used pieces of his story as part of their belief system. But it's more likely that he was just a creative guy with a touch of schizophrenia. According to Sanya Roman and Diane Packer, authors of Opening to Channel, How to Connect with Your Guide, channeling is a powerful means of spiritual unfoldment and conscious transformation. As you channel, you build a bridge to the higher realms, a loving, caring, purposeful, creative higher consciousness that has been called God, the all that is, or the universal mind. Channeling involves consciously shifting your mind and mental space in order to achieve an expanded state of consciousness. To achieve this expanded state of consciousness, channelers usually meditate, trying to break free of worldly influences and tune in to a higher consciousness. They may imagine themselves seeking out specific spirits of the dead, or they may be contacted, apparently unbidden, by some unknown force that wishes to communicate. In addition to having ancient legends that tell tales of beings from the sky, we as a species have been obsessed with the stars and our place in the universe since we developed the ability to recognize patterns and the corresponding ability to be fooled by patterns which aren't really there, which is called pareidolia. We looked up and saw what the stars' alignment at certain times during the year looked like, and groups of stars themselves look like objects. But those constellations are seen as completely different objects to different people in different places and times. The stars, which make up our constellations, are really millions of miles apart, and some of them may even be burned out by now, which we won't register until their light goes out millions of years from now. Why would spirits contact people and tell them they're aliens? For the same reason that human beings say outlandish things. They want attention. Edward Albert Meyer, born on February the 3rd of 1937, is a Swiss citizen who is the source of many controversial photographs of alleged unidentified flying objects, which he presents in support of his claim that he is in contact with extraterrestrial beings. He also presented other controversial material during the 1970s, such as metal samples, sound recordings, and film footage. Meyer reports regular contact with extraterrestrials he calls the Pleiadian. Meyer claims that the Pleiadian look similar in appearance to humans, that the Pleiadian homeworld is called Era, and that in its location in a dimension which is a fraction of a second shifted from our own dimension, about 80 light years beyond the Pleiades, it's an open star cluster. The Pleiadian were given the name Pleiadians by Meyer up to 1995. Edward Billy Meyer's claimed his first extraterrestrial contact occurred in 1942 at the age of 5 with an elderly extraterrestrial human named Seth. Contacts with Seth lasted until 1953. From 1953 to 1964, Meyer's contacts continued with an extraterrestrial human woman named Ascot Meyer, saying that after an 11-year break, contacts resumed again, beginning on January 28th of 75, with an extraterrestrial human woman named Samjis, the granddaughter of Seth. In his teens, Meyer joined the French Foreign Legion, but says he soon left and returned home. He traveled extensively around the world, pursuing spiritual exploration, covering some 42 countries over 12 years. In 1965, he lost his left arm in a bus accident in Turkey. In 1966, he met and married a Greek woman, Calliope, with whom he has 3 children. The nickname Billy came by way of an American friend who thought Meyer's cowboy style of dress reminded her of Billy the Kid. Meyer has accumulated a large collection of controversial photographs showing alleged spaceships called beam ships, as well as alleged extraterrestrial humanoids called the Pleiadian. Meyer says the Pleiadian gave him permission to photograph and film their beam ships in order to produce some of the evidence for extraterrestrial visitation. Meyer's claims are disputed by UFO skeptics as well as some UFO enthusiasts. Many of Meyer's proponents and believers exist among UFO enthusiasts, and his evidence has seen increased exposure through the efforts of an American representative, Michael Horn, who has appeared on popular late-night paranormal programs such as Coast to Coast AM. Beginning in 1975, Meyer allegedly began his official contacts, official in that evidence was to be provided publicly unlike other contacts, communicating both directly or face-to-face and by telepathy with a core group of the Pleiadians, or Arans, as he also refers to them, Era being their home planet. He gave their names as Ptah, Samjiz, Huansoy, and Plaje, among numerous others. According to Meyer in the video documentary Contact, his first contact with extraterrestrials began in January of 1975. These visitors reportedly hail from the Pleiadian star system, which is beyond the Pleiades and in a dimension that is a fraction of a second in the future from our own, an alternate timeline. These Pleiadians have allegedly afforded Meyer a more interesting sampling of evidence than that derived from most such encounters, including highly detailed photography, videos, multi-toned sound recordings, the temporary use of a weapon which he employed for trial on a nearby tree, and metal alloy samples. Meyer claims the visitors charged him with certain information and consciousness-raising tasks. As he undertook this mission, he met with a great deal of scorn and assassination attempts. Some of these were allegedly initiated by hostile extraterrestrial entities and subsequently defeated largely through the intervention of the Pleiadian friends. Meyer allegedly was uncomfortable with the megalomaniacal association which would attach to his role as a representative, such as the term prophet, but he undertook the effort nonetheless. Meyer claims that he was instructed to transcribe his conversations with various extraterrestrials, some of which have been published in the German language. These books are referred to as the Contact Notes or Contact Reports. Currently, there are 9 published volumes of the Contact Reports. Some of the Contact Reports were translated into English, extensively edited and expurged, and published in the out-of-print Volume 4 set of Messages from the Pleiades by Meyer's case investigator Wendell Stevens. Meyer's alleged discussions with the Pleiadians are highly detailed and wide-ranging, dealing with subjects ranging from spirituality and the afterlife to the dangers of mainstream religions, human history, science, and astronomical phenomena, ecology, and environmental dangers, in addition to prophecies of future historic trends and events. An additional aspect of the Meyer case is the highly controversial book, the Talmud Jamal. It is said to be the translation of ancient Arabic scrolls that were discovered by Meyer and a colleague in Jerusalem in 1963. The book claims to be the original teachings and life events of a man named Jamal. Extensive study has been made of the book by James Deardoff. Some of the most important evidence for Meyer's claims come from his large collection of controversial photographs. These include images of alleged spacecraft in the Swiss countryside, the Apollo-Soyuz 1975 docking, and distant astronomical phenomena. Supporters insist that the images are exceptionally high quality and that a one-armed man could not possibly have fabricated them. Critics such as Stanton Friedman and Jacques Vallée believe them to be fakes. Some critics have provided examples of similar faked photographs and have pointed out that some of his photos are taken from science fiction books, paintings, and television programs. Meyer claims that these photos were altered by intelligence agencies and slipped into his collection in order to discredit his UFO testimony. Other allegations include focus and light direction problems consistent with cut and paste and model techniques. The metal alloy samples are said to have been given to Meyer by the Pleiadians and then passed on to Wendell Stevens, who then had them tested by chemist Marcel Vogel. Vogel said that in his view, the samples could not have been made by means of contemporary earthly metallurgy, as they were apparently produced via cold fusion. Vogel also stated that the metal vanished from the IBM laboratory not long after his work was completed, which prevented other scientists from performing their own analysis on it. As recounted in the unabridged version of Message from the Pleiades, Volume 2, Meyer was taken back in time by the extraterrestrial Ascot, where he met personally with Jamal, alleged to be the real Jesus Christ, and who told Meyer that Meyer's evolution was higher than that of Jamal himself, saying, "Truly, your evolution has proceeded for 2,000 years further, which fact I have not considered." The contact with Jamal lasted for 4 days, after which Meyer was returned to the present time. Billy Meyer repeatedly warns of an impending Third World War beginning in November of 2006, 2008, 2010, or 2011. He has also denounced the terrorist activities and vigilante behavior of various Muslim extremist groups, which he says only foment the possibility of war. At one time, Meyer suggested November 2006 as the most likely start of World War III, then revised the date to November 2008, a period that has also now passed. In any case, Meyer states that in an approaching year, 4 world leaders will die within 7 days of one another, giving a clear sign that within a mere 2 years of those events, the long-feared World War will indeed erupt. That is, unless terrestrials finally gain mastery over their reason and change their behavior, insisting that these prophecies are all subject to change as opposed to inevitabilities. Billy Meyer is alive today and continues to teach his alien religion. Realism is a UFO religion that was formed in 1974 by Claude Verlhan, now known as Real. The Realian movement teaches that life on Earth was scientifically created by a species of extraterrestrial, which they call the Elohim. Members of this species appeared human when having personal contact with the descendants of the humans that they made. They purposefully misinformed early humanity that they were angels or gods. Raelians believe that messengers or prophets of the Elohim, including Buddha, Jesus, and others, who informed the humans of each era. The founder of Raelianism received the final message of the Elohim, and that its purpose is to inform the world about Elohim, and that if humans become aware and peaceful enough, they wish to be welcomed by them. The Raelian religion has a quasi-clerical structure of 7 levels. Joining the movement requires an official apostasy from other religions. Raelianism ethics include striving for world peace, sharing, democracy, and nonviolence. Rael founded Clonad, originally Valiant Venture Ltd. Corporation, in 1997, but then handed it over to a Raelian bishop, Brigitte Brosserier, in 2000. In 2002, the company claimed that an American woman underwent a standard cloning procedure that led to the birth of a daughter, Eve. Although few believed the claim, it nonetheless attracted national authorities and mainstream media to look further into the Raelian cult. The Raelians frequently used the swastika as a symbol of peace, which halted Raelian requests for territory in Israel and later Lebanon for establishing an embassy for extraterrestrials. The religion also uses the swastika embedded on the Star of David. Between 1991 and 2007, this symbol was often replaced by a variant star and swirl symbol in an attempt to improve public relations, particularly with Israel. Raelians do not believe in a god or other deity, but in extraterrestrials. Former clergy of mainstream religions have joined the Raelian Church, especially in Quebec. The structure of the movement had promoted some of them to the level of priest or bishop due to extensive Bible training and teaching skills. 2 ex-Roman Catholic priests converted to Raelism. A former bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints joined the Raelian movement so he could be openly gay. The Raelian Mark Woodgate stated that 8% of Raelians worldwide are former Latter-day Saints. Religiously mixed couples are common, especially with spouses who are Christians or Buddhists. Raelianism claims that all life on Earth, humans included, was created scientifically by Elohim, members of an extraterrestrial race who appeared similar to small humans and so were often depicted as angels or gods. Raelians, who are not monotheists, believe the correct historical meaning of the word Elohim is the plural sense, those who came from the sky. Belief in extraterrestrial Elohim plays a central part in Clonad's claim of offering cloning services for homosexual and infertile couples who want a child cloned from a partner's DNA. Raelians believe that throughout the ages, members of the Elohim civilization sent different prophets, including Moses, Jesus, Buddha, and many others, whose role was to guide humanity and to prepare humans for the future, all of whom were created as a result of a sexual union between a human woman and one of the Elohim. To Raelians, this was possible because the Elohim had advanced DNA synthesis and genetic engineering. The Elohim later reduced the frequent visits so that humans were largely left to progress on their own until the time of the apocalypse, when they would send their final messenger and disclose themselves at an extraterrestrial embassy, establishing political and economic ties. Raelians believe that sex is a normal, natural, and healthy part of life and encourage people to be true to their natural sexuality. They promote healing from damaging messages from strict puritanical belief systems and social stigmas that stifle one's natural sexuality. Acceptance of masturbation, homosexuality, bisexuality, pansexuality, naturalism, and any legal, safe, and consensual adult activity is promoted as part of a healthy and long life, and this is used to attract young converts to the religion. Raelians believe that sexuality is a gift of pleasure to mankind from the Elohim. Raelians believe in reclaiming the swastika by restoring its historical meaning as a symbol of peace and good luck. The swastika has been used for millennia in the East as a religious symbol of peace and harmony.